I never imagined I'd be standing here today, telling you all about the moment my life changed forever. If you had told me years ago that I would experience something so intense, so undeniably real, I probably would have laughed it off. I wasn't the kind of person who thought much about God or the afterlife. I was too busy living in the moment, working hard, traveling, and enjoying the freedom of my life at sea. But everything shifted the day I came face to face with death, and with a love so overwhelming that it rewrote everything I thought I knew. It happened while I was preparing for a charter season on a boat in St. Thomas. I had done this 100 times before, checking equipment, making sure everything was set for the trips ahead. That day, I was working with an outboard motor on a dinghy when, out of nowhere, it malfunctioned. Before I could react, the motor flipped, and in a split second, I was thrown into the water. I remember the violent pull, the shock of being submerged, and then impact. The propeller hit me not once, not twice, but multiple times. My face was torn open, my teeth shattered inside my mouth. My eye was damaged, my arm nearly severed. It should have been unbearable. It should have been the worst pain imaginable. But here's the thing, I felt nothing, no pain, just an eerie stillness. I remember sinking, watching the world above me grow distant, the water around me strangely quiet. I should have been panicking. I should have been drowning. But instead, something impossible happened. I felt completely calm. It was as if the fear, the pain, the chaos of what had just happened couldn't touch me. My body was broken, but my mind, my soul, felt untouched. And then I saw myself. I was floating, looking down at my own body, my arms weightless at my sides. I should have seen blood clouding the water, but there was nothing, just light. A brilliant, warm, indescribable light surrounded me, unlike anything I had ever seen before. It wasn't just bright, it was alive. It wrapped around me like a presence, like something, or someone was there with me. And then, I saw it, a massive arm, enormous beyond words, reaching down toward me. It was larger than life, like something out of a vision, stretching through the water as if it had been waiting for me all along. Without thinking, without hesitation, I reached for it, not with my hands, but with my thoughts. And in an instant, I was there, holding on to it. The moment I touched it, I felt something I had never known before, a love so deep, so complete, that it filled every empty space inside me. It was the kind of love that didn't need words, it just was. And then, I felt a gentle pat on my head, and I heard a voice. A voice that wasn't loud but carried more power than anything I had ever heard before. It simply said, "Hang on, you're okay." That was it. Just those few words, but in that moment, I knew I was not alone. I had never been alone, and I never would be again. I don't know how long I stayed there, holding on to that presence, but time didn't seem to exist in the way it does here. There was no rush, no fear, no pain, only peace. A kind of peace I had never experienced before. I didn't feel wet, even though I was underwater. I didn't feel broken, even though I knew my body had been torn apart. I felt weightless, held in something greater than myself. And in that moment, I understood something deep in my soul. This was real, more real than anything I had ever known. I didn't have the words for it then, but now, looking back, I know what it was. It was God. It was His love, His presence, His reassurance that no matter what happened next, I was His. But then, just as suddenly as it had begun, I felt myself being pulled back. I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay in that peace, in that love, in that place where nothing was missing and nothing was broken. But it wasn't my time. In a rush, I was yanked back into my body, back into the chaos of the moment. The dinghy was still circling wildly, and my friends were screaming my name, desperately trying to get to me. I could hear their panic, see their frantic movements through the water, but I still felt no pain. I should have been in agony. My body had been torn apart, but I was floating, drifting in and out of consciousness as if God was still shielding me. The emergency response was slow, but somehow, I held on. And I know now it wasn't because of my own strength, it was because of His. I don't remember much of the rescue, just flashes of faces and voices. My friends risked their own lives to pull me out of the water, dodging the still spinning propeller, dragging me onto the boat with their bare hands. I should have been screaming, but I wasn't. I should have been in shock, but I wasn't. It was as if someone was holding me together, keeping me from slipping away. The boat rushed toward shore, but everything was slow. I faded in and out, my vision blurring, my body growing colder. I knew how bad my injuries were. I knew people didn't survive things like this. And yet, in the middle of it all, I felt something that didn't make sense. Peace, not fear, not desperation, just peace. It was as if I had brought a piece of that other place back with me, a piece of that love, a piece of Him. By the time I reached the hospital, the doctors looked at me like I was a dead woman. I could see it in their eyes. They had no reason to believe I would make it. And honestly, if I had been relying on human strength alone, I wouldn't have. But God wasn't done with me yet. The next hours were a blur of surgeries, blood transfusions, and frantic medical teams trying to piece me back together. The pain should have been unbearable. The damage should have been too great. But I held on to what I had seen, what I had felt. I held on to that voice, those words, "Hang on, you're okay." And somehow, against all odds, I survived, not just barely, not just by chance. I survived because God reached into that water and pulled me out. Recovery wasn't easy. The physical wounds were one thing: surgeries, stitches, months of rehab, but the real battle was in my mind and heart. I had come so close to death, so close to something far greater than this life, and yet I was back here in a broken body, trying to make sense of it all. Why had God saved me? Why had I been given a second chance? I wrestled with those questions daily. But in the quiet moments when the world slowed down and I closed my eyes, I could still feel it, that love, that peace, that presence. It never left me, and slowly, I began to understand. God hadn't just saved my life, He had changed it. He had let me see, truly see, that He was real, that He was near, and that I had never been alone, not in the water, not in my pain, not ever. I started diving into the Bible, looking for answers, searching for something that could put into words what I had experienced. And then I found it, Isaiah 41:10. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. That was it. That was what I had felt in that water. What had held me when I should have died. His righteous right hand. It wasn't just a metaphor, it was real. I had clung to it, and in that moment, I knew my life wasn't my own anymore. I couldn't go back to who I was before. I had to share what I had seen, what I had felt. People needed to know that God isn't distant. He isn't just a belief or a story in a book. He is real, He is near, and He is holding us even when we don't see it, even when we don't believe it. At first, I didn't know how to talk about what had happened to me. How do you explain something so beyond words? How do you tell people you saw the hand of God and expect them to believe you? I hesitated, afraid they'd think I was imagining things, that maybe it was just a near-death hallucination. But the more I kept quiet, the more I felt a fire growing inside me, like God Himself was telling me, "You have to speak." So I did. I started sharing, little by little, and to my surprise, people listened. Some with curiosity, some with doubt, but many with something else: hunger. A deep hunger to know if what I had experienced was real, if that kind of love, that kind of peace, could be theirs too. And the answer is yes, 1,000 times yes. Because this isn't just my story, it's God's truth. I used to think He was distant, that He belonged to churches and preachers and people who had their lives together. But He was with me, a broken, lost woman, floating in the sea with a shattered body. And if He was with me then, He is with you now. No matter where you are, no matter what you've done, no matter how lost you feel, His hand is reaching for you. The same hand that pulled me out of the depths is holding you too. And I'm standing here today, not because I survived, but because He saved me. And He can do the same for you. Since that day, I've learned to live differently. Not because I'm perfect or because everything magically fell into place, but because I know now that I am never alone. And I know that I don't have to understand everything or have all the answers. All I need to do is trust Him, trust that He is always with me, even when life doesn't make sense. And that's the biggest lesson I've learned in life: doesn't have to make sense for God to be working in it. We don't always get to choose the paths we walk, but He's right there, guiding us through it all. So, if you're struggling today, if you're feeling lost or overwhelmed, I want you to know that there is hope. There is peace. There is love that goes beyond anything you can imagine. You don't have to have a near-death experience to know it. Just open your heart and ask. Ask for His presence, ask for His love, ask for His guidance. He will be there, just like He was there for me. And you will never be the same again. I promise you that.